It feels like you can get your credit scores anywhere these days. Random websites, card statements, budgeting apps, heck, even your dog might bark out a few numbers. It's true. Credit Karma isn't the only place you can find them. But we actually do more with your scores to help you find your next financial opportunity. Like a more rewarding credit card, a game plan that helps you pay down debt faster, or a personal loan to help you save more on interest payments each month. Cha-ching! The possibilities are kinda endless. Download Intuit Credit Karma today to get started.
The new Apple Watch Series 10 is here. It has the biggest display ever. It's also the thinnest Apple Watch ever, making it even more comfortable on your wrist. And it's the fastest charging Apple Watch, getting you 8 hours of charge in just 15 minutes. Introducing the all-new Apple Watch Series 10, now available for the first time in glossy jet black aluminum. Compared to previous generation, iPhone XS or later required. Charge time and actual results will vary.
The holiday season officially starts when you get that first card in the mail. Shutterfly makes it easy to add more meaning to the everyday with hundreds of holiday card designs that can be personalized in seconds with your favorite photos from this year. Select your greeting, customize the color, and even add little extras like personalized foil to make a holiday card that really shines. Enjoy 40% off with code SMILE40 at Shutterfly.com and send something meaningful this year. See site for more details.
This episode is brought to you by Opill, the first over-the-counter daily birth control pill available in the U.S. Opill is FDA approved, full prescription strength, and estrogen-free. Plus, there's no prescription needed. Finally, the days of needing a prescription for birth control are over. Opill is available online and at most major retailers. Take control of your health and reproductive journey with Opill. Birth control in your control. Use code BIRTHCONTROL for 25% off your first month of Opill at Opill.com.
DBR Bites, episode number 65, folks. This is Jason Evans, here for your listening enjoyment. I'm joined by my buddy Donald Wine. We have no guest. We have no third person on the pod this time. I know the past couple times we had like Scott Rich, we had Sam Klein. Back to just
You're stuck with us.
Yeah, just a duo today for an edition of DBR Bites. I don't know how long this one's going to go, but it's a bunch of different, like sort of smaller topics. So we're going to call it a Bites. And Donald, we're going to start with a topic that you are an expert on. Miami football, because this weekend, the 6-2 Duke Blue Devils will be playing the 8-0 Miami Hurricanes, a team ranked in the top 5, a team that is absolutely looking to, shore up its spot in the college football playoff. I think Clemson's probably looking at being like maybe like as high as like a number 3 seed or something like that, because if they continue and are the ACC champions, they would be pretty darn highly rated among all the conference champions. They probably would just fall behind the Big Ten and the SEC champions. So a lot riding on the line here for Miami, because the last thing they need is to drop a game to a team that they're a big favorite over. But again, Miami super well.
All those superlatives you just mentioned, you forgot the most important one. This is the Wine Bowl. That's what we call it every single year, or at least every year that we end up playing. But yes, it's a very important game for Miami, and even for Duke. There's some implications here because after the SMU game last weekend, we don't have to talk about what happened, but after that game, you kind of want to get back and get that salty taste out of your mouth.
I think when we all, have been looking at the schedule over the past few weeks, this is a game that a lot of people think Duke's gonna. This is the least likely game on the schedule left for us to win. And while I hate the term moral victories, I think a lot of people would consider it a little bit of a moral victory if Duke kept it close. But before you get to telling us about the players and what we need to look for from Miami, I do want to note something, which is that, Miami was crushing teams earlier in the year. We're well aware that they opened the season by beating Florida by 24. They then played Florida A&M, Ball State, and South Florida, 3 lesser teams, non-power conference teams, and they beat them each by like 45, 50 points. They're blowing the doors off of. I want to say Ball State was like 62-0 or something absurd.
It was,
like that. I mean, just wow.
56-9 against A&M, Florida A&M. Like South Florida again went to South Florida, not a contest, and the going rate with those games was everyone at that point was kind of like, oh wow, Miami might be pretty good, like top 3 good, and they weren't being discussed among top 3, but that was when people kind of said, yo, we might need to pay attention to them.
But the reason I pointed out is that they then ran into a little streak of games in the ACC where they did not look nearly as dominant. I mean, like if you're someone who was paying attention earlier in the year and we're like, oh, Miami's incredible. Well, they beat Virginia Tech by 4 in a game where they were trailing by 10 in the fourth quarter. They beat Cal by 1 in a game they were trailing by 20 in the fourth quarter.
They were trailing by 27 with like 5 minutes left in the third quarter. One of the biggest comebacks in college football history in that game.
Yeah.
And that was a game I think we talked about on the show. I said, if you watched that on the East Coast, you literally made it to 3 a.m. because that's how many stoppages of play there were from them coming back and scoring touchdowns and the timeouts and all that. But that game was where people kind of said, okay, that's their lucky game of the year, right? Like if you have to have one game where you kind of escape. That was a game they escaped. But as you're about to mention, the struggles kind of continued for them over the last couple of weeks.
Right. Well, and then they played Louisville. It was a very close, competitive game. They won it by 7. And Louisville's a very good team. Make no mistake about it. I think a lot of people would say that Louisville could very well be the second best team in the ACC. So, I mean, there's no shame in that, but not quite, if you're really a top 5 team, maybe Louisville by 7 is, not quite the result you would expect. And then last week they played that woeful Florida State team that just seems to be terribly, terribly struggling, and they beat them by 22. Just absolute, another beatdown. So, all right, I've talked a bunch about a team that I know little about. It is your turn. Tell me something about Miami, and I'm going to prompt you. You got to start with Cam Ward, who's considered one of the Heisman frontrunners.
He might be the Heisman frontrunner. And before I get to Cam Ward, let me start generally about Miami's offense, because Miami's offense, just like SMU's, is prolific. They average 47.5 points a game. Jason, here's a stat, and we've talked about third down conversions on Duke's side and how we've struggled with that all year. Well, the struggles, they have not struggled with that. Let me tell you how. Since the Florida game, the first week of the year, they've had 88 drives. They've gone 3 and out in just one of them. Let me repeat that.
Dude, wait.
88 drives. 88 drives.
Unbelievable.
1 3 and out. They had 2 against Florida, so they've only had 3 all year. And it comes down to the fact that Cam Ward has just been absolutely electric when his back is to the wall, essentially. On third down conversions overall, they have 59.2% conversion rate, which is not necessarily super high, but it means, more often than not, they're getting the first down if it's third and short, third and 6. But as you mentioned, it starts with Cam Ward, the transfer from Washington State. He's one of the leading candidates for the Heisman. Jason, let me give you his stats, because his stats are as long as this preview is going to be. 2,746 yards, 24 touchdowns, 5 interceptions in the air, 68% completion rate. He averages 9.8 yards per throw. His longest throw has been for 77 yards, and he's only been sacked 15 times. Now, I'm not done. I'm not done.
I'm not done. I know, but wait. It's painful to hear those. Those are ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, but I'm not done, because this guy also can run the ball too. He has 42 carries for 186 yards and 3 touchdowns. He has a long of 24 yards, and the way he runs is effortless. He runs like he doesn't care. And the fact is, he probably doesn't. But while you're saying, man, this dude doesn't care, he's getting 10 yards downfield and getting first downs. Wait, Jason, I'm not done. He can also catch the ball too, because last week against Florida State, he had 1 reception for 7 yards, and it was for a touchdown. So this guy can throw, he can run, he can catch. He really is the real deal, but he is not alone. I think the thing about Miami's offense, we'll talk about, if there is a weak point, and I say that in air quotes, it's the run game, but they still have some really good guys who can run the ball. Damian Martinez has 529 yards and 8 touchdowns so far this year. He also has 11 receptions for over 150 yards. Mark Fletcher can run the ball. He has 5 touchdowns. Jordan Lyle can run the ball. He has 3 touchdowns. A.J. Allen has 2 touchdowns, and all of them are over 180 yards rushing on the year. So this offense is very prolific from a running standpoint, but their skill players are going downfield and getting a lot of yards and touchdowns, led by Xavier Restrepo, who could be the best wide receiver in the country. I'm saying that because he has been that good so far this year. He has 42 receptions for 710 yards and 6 touchdowns. And every single time he catches the ball, it is a momentum shift for Miami and for their fans. And granted, this game is on the road in Miami. He is one of the fan favorites down there. If he gets open downfield and catches the ball, that is a boost for everybody in that stadium, and it is a boost for that team. They use that and they feed off of that. Isaiah Horton also can catch the ball. He has 4 touchdowns. You'll see Sam Brown, Jacoby George, Elijah Arroyo, and Elijah Lofton also catching touchdowns, catching a lot of balls. Between the 3 of them, they have over like 150 receptions. So they are throwing the ball a lot. They are getting downfield quite a bit, and they are scoring a lot of points off of the throws. And if they can't even get off the field and score touchdowns, then they have one of the best kickers in the nation in Andres Borregales, who is 40 for 40 from extra points and has only missed 1 field goal all year, his longest being from 56 yards. So their offense is prolific. Their offense is scary. And the thing about our defense is if you give up big plays, this is the one team in the country that will absolutely accept them and give you more of them because they love feeding off of the momentum that is built from a big play. Now, let me switch to the defense because the defense I think has been very good, but the struggles on defense is why, Jason, as you alluded to at the top, they've been struggling a lot over the last few weeks. Francisco Mayorga, probably their best guy on the team. 43 tackles, 2 sacks, 5 passes defense, 1 interception, and 1 forced fumble. He will be everywhere. Mish Powell has 3 interceptions and 2 passes defensed. He is going to be everywhere in the secondary. But their struggles are in the secondary in giving up their own big plays. So Malik Murphy, last week I thought he did very good throwing the football. He needs to continue to do that and find his receivers. Eli Pancol needs to have a big day. Jordan Moore needs to have a big day. Nicky Dalmelin needs to have a big day because that is going to put a lot of pressure on their defense. And when their pressure gets a lot of defense, they give up points. And that is how teams have been staying in the games. The other thing that needs to be there, has to be there to establish all this, Jason, is the run game. We've talked about the run game all season, but the one thing about Miami is a lot of their momentum breakers on defense have been when some team runs all over them. And they don't want a team to run all over them because they know that puts a lot of pressure on their linebackers, who are very, very good. But if their linebackers are pressed and having to figure out between the run and the pass, you can pass over them all day or you can run through them all day. And I think that is where they've been able to struggle. But again, you have to find a team that's going to go toe-to-toe with their offense. And the offense has been absolutely incredible in keeping them in games, bringing them back in the case of Cal and Virginia Tech, and also just making sure that you run away with it. That game against Florida State was 36-14, but it was not as close as the final score was. I think Florida State scored maybe in like the last couple of minutes of the game, but that team absolutely just ran Florida State off of the field very early and made it where that was just basically a pedestrian contest where guys were throwing the ball back and forth. So how does Duke beat Miami? Well, I don't want to say we need to have a perfect game.
This is the part I want to hear.
Yeah, I don't want to say we need to have a perfect game, but it needs to be very close. The one place where I think that we can excel at, and we did it last week, is taking the ball away from them. Because of course, the one thing that Duke or that Miami will not do, they don't get a lot of interceptions. I'm sorry, they have a lot of interceptions, but they don't force the ball, and they get some sacks. But the thing is, they just want to get you off the field. They're not necessarily worried about, I guess, in a team that invented the turnover chain, they're not as impressed with getting off the field via the interception, but they have guys that are skilled enough to do it if you throw the ball wrong. The problem is, if you can get them pressure, if you can get them on backing up with our offense, again, via the run game, but also through the air, that is where you'll be able to exploit them. But also for Duke, when we take the ball away, and there will be opportunities to take the ball away, not necessarily via the interception, but maybe via a fumble. If you take the ball away, Jason, say it with me, you must score.
Oh God,
You
yes.
must score because we cannot have another game where we have 0 points from turnovers. If they give us a short field, we need to take advantage of it and score points because the only way to keep up with Miami is to score as many points as they do and then hope at the end that you get a break that falls your way, whether it be via a good play on offense or a takeaway on defense. So this is going to be a tough game for Duke. And I think the one thing is it's also obviously a homecoming for Manny Diaz. He was at Miami. He got fired from Miami. A lot of people in Miami think he got a raw deal in the sense that they didn't really give him a chance to build the program that he was trying to build and went after a couple of other guys. But in at the end of the day, Manny Diaz, he says he's at peace about going back to Miami. He thinks he's going to get some cheers, maybe. He's not going to get cheers. And I promise you, when he hears those boos coming from the fans in the stands, he is going to be motivated to try and win this game. Will they win this game? It's going to be about making sure you have almost a perfect day. And then somebody out there who, if you're going to the game Miami, throw some of that luck on the field, whether they be rabbit's feet or whatever. But we need a little bit of luck to go our way because we need Cam Ward to have a pedestrian day, which he has not. We need Xavier Restrepo to have a pedestrian day, which he hasn't. And we need their defense to struggle once again. If that happens, then maybe, just maybe, we get the upset. But I'm not going to paint the picture that Duke is going to go down there and waltz into Hard Rock Stadium and deliver the upset. We both hope that happens, but a lot has to go right for that to happen.
Yeah, ESPN and Vegas make Miami about a 21-point favorite in this game, 3 touchdowns, which is just a lot.
That's just the over.
Yeah, right. I agree with you that I don't know that it takes a perfect game, but Duke's gonna, especially on offense, Duke's gonna have to be better than they have been lately. And I, as a piece of me that wonders if maybe this is a game where if Malik Murphy is struggling in the way he has been, that we start, that Henry Beeline maybe gets, a little bit more of a chance or something like that. It wouldn't entirely shock me if that happens. And then the other thing I would say about it is maybe, just maybe, you catch Miami, sort of napping a little bit. Not that they've got a huge game on the schedule coming up. They got Georgia Tech next after Duke. I'm not saying they'd be looking ahead too much, but this is a Miami team that I'm sure looks at Duke, looks at our name, and says, "Oh, this is not going to be a big deal. This is not a team that really threatens us." And so, perhaps if we get a little bit of an overconfident Miami, we'll have a chance. But the important thing to point out, in my opinion, and then I'll let you have last word on this. This is a Miami club that, as we said, as I was saying at the top, they were down 10 to Virginia Tech in the fourth quarter. They were down 27 in the second half, 20 in the fourth quarter to Cal, and came back and won both those games. You can't, if you manage to catch them napping a bit, maybe they make a careless turnover or two, and suddenly you're like, we got a chance here. You got to stay focused. This is a Miami team that will come back on you fast because their offense is so prolific. And you, until the final whistle sounds, I would not be confident ever against Miami.
If you're able to get a lead against Miami, and as you mentioned, catch them napping, then you need to do everything in your power to keep knocking them the heck back out and putting them back to sleep. Because again, as you mentioned, if they wake very quickly and they can get downfield quickly, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, this game was a blowout, and now it's a tough game, and that's where their mental psyche takes over. But I will say this: you mentioned the upcoming schedule for Miami, and I think it's an important note that Duke might be the best team they have left in the regular season moving forward. Because you mentioned the Georgia Tech game. After the Georgia Tech game, they have a break, and then after that, they have
Wake Forest.
What am I looking at? Wake Forest,
and then
Syracuse.
Yeah.
And when we talked about them at the top, we talked about them having the eyes on the playoff, and it's November. It'll be November 2nd when we face them. That is the last month of the season, and that is when people start looking ahead to what could be coming on the horizon. As a Miami fan, I'm hoping that they don't look forward beyond Duke, right? But as a Duke fan, you want them to hope that they're like, hey, if we just get past this team, then we're smooth sailing. But this isn't such a good team as we faced earlier in the season. We should be okay. And that is where maybe their minds start drifting. Maybe they start, not doing plays 100%. Duke needs to be 100% in everything they do, maybe even 110%, but they need to be focused, take it one play at a time and know that you're not going to beat Miami on one play. Because if you think you're going to do that, you're going to lose. Take it bit by bit. Don't look at the scoreboard really. And then when you hit that fourth quarter where we have been really good, maybe that can be the closeout time. But again, you have to have a really good day from all areas of the football field, and I hope Duke can do it. But again, it is a tall task this Saturday.
By the way, one thing I want to note that is a sort of weird quirk of the ACC scheduling. So Miami is 4-0 in the conference. Clemson is 5-0, but they're not the only undefeated teams. SMU and Pittsburgh are both also undefeated. Now, SMU and Pittsburgh play this week, so one of those teams will fall aside.
And Pitt is undefeated the whole season. Like, they haven't lost yet. I believe they're 7-0.
Right. No, I'm talking in the conference. Because conference standings matter. There's a scenario where Clemson, Miami, and SMU are all undefeated at the end of the year. That, again, because of a quirk in the schedule, those three teams don't play each other at all. And this game against Duke could end up being a big deal for Miami because the top two teams in the national championship picture, in the rankings, are going to be the two teams that will play for the ACC title. And I don't know it's going to happen, but if you look at their schedules, it looks like it could happen that Clemson, Miami, and SMU could all be undefeated in the ACC at the end of the year. A loss to Duke could knock Miami back in a way that suddenly puts them in danger of perhaps being undefeated, but not making the ACC championship game. So they need to stay focused because, like I said, there's this weirdness in the schedule that makes every game matter in a way that perhaps some seasons it wouldn't.
Well, they would be defeated if we won on Saturday, so that would eliminate.
Yeah,
them.
I'm talking. Oh, you're right. They would have a loss.
Yeah, they would have one loss, but the point remains that yes, if they want to remain high, but also, Jason, that means a struggle game, right? The like 4th and 5 games could also force people in the rankings to kind of go, maybe this team isn't as good as we thought, and start knocking down. So Miami, make no mistake, want to come out and perform and blow the doors off of Duke. It's Duke's job to stop them. And if Duke can put on the struggle, not only could it affect Miami, and also remember, we keep talking about this, bowl eligibility, we have already made it, but we want to get to a good bowl. To do that, you need to show that you can beat the good teams, or at least look good against them, because that's what bowl matchups want. They want teams to face each other and have a good game and have eyeballs on their bowl game. If we want to get to a nice bowl, like, somewhere in Florida, then we need to beat the Florida team.
There you go. All right. Hey, so what is this podcast called? What's our name again?
Duke Basketball Roundup.
Oh, that's right. Let's get to a little bit of basketball news. We got some stuff to talk about. We're going to get to guys who are being paid in a little bit. But before that, we want to get to guys who this weekend, we will find out whether or not they are future Blue Devils. There are two key recruits for Duke who both will be announcing their college decisions on Saturday, actually within about a half hour of each other on Saturday afternoon. It's not that they coordinated anything or anything like that. It's just that it happens to be
what it is. Yeah.
Yeah. It just is what it is. Those two recruits were two guys who were both at Countdown to Craziness when I was in town. It's Shelton Henderson and Acaden Lewis. Donald, I want to start with Acaden Lewis because we've spoken about him a pretty good bit on this podcast. Just a reminder to anyone who doesn't know, Acaden's father is a high school classmate of Donald's.
Yes.
You guys have known each other for a long time. When I was at Countdown, I got to spend some time chatting with Jarrett Lewis, Acaden's dad. Just a great guy. And, this is a kid that I think you and I both would love to see in a Duke uniform. I will openly say I have not spoken to Jarrett about whether Acaden is going to be picking Duke. I have heard from other people, from sources around the program, that Duke has probably cooled a little bit on Acaden since we signed the Boozers, and specifically since we got Caden Boozer committed. Just really quick so folks understand, Acaden is a 6'2" point guard. He is a elite scoring guard. This is a dude who can get his shot and fill it up. He is great with the ball in his hands, but maybe not the best facilitator kind of guard. Not that he's bad at it, but it's just not something he's done a lot of. And it is worth noting, as I said, I've heard that Duke maybe has cooled on him a little bit. The crystal balls out there, the national recruiting analysts who pay attention to this stuff, they all kind of say that Acaden's probably going to, not probably, they've made picks that he's going to be selecting Kentucky. His other finalists, it's Duke, Kentucky, or UConn. And frankly, I think a lot of the folks have looked at the fact that both UConn and Duke have brought in point guards who would seem to be a competition for Acaden, and at Kentucky, perhaps there's a better opportunity to get immediate playing time. I'll let you get in on him now for just a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, you mentioned the 3 finalists. UConn is out with Braylon Mullins committing. That was kind of where they kind of cooled, and that was sort of made official. And they actually had a Sports Center Next where they kind of had a look in on Acaden and his mom and dad kind of discussing all the 3 schools, and they really were mentioning, and they're really going back and forth between Duke and Kentucky. And yes, I think the log jam or potential log jam at the point guard position and at the combo guard position at Duke should either of Caleb Foster or Tyrese Proctor or both end up staying. That is probably what's weighing more on him, where, as you mentioned, he walks into Kentucky and there's basically 2 open spots for him in the backcourt for him to take. So I think that's what's making him lean towards Kentucky. But we will say this: I have not spoken with him about final decisions. I will not do that only unless he offers. I will not speak to Jared about it because that's my man, and I want Acaden to have this moment in the place where it all started for him. He's going to be doing it at the rec center that he started playing ball in. That's where he's making his announcement. And I think that's really cool. And so I'm going to let him have that moment. But if the crystal balls are wrong, I promise you I'll be the most ecstatic person on this side of the Mississippi. I'm hoping.
And it's worth noting,
yeah.
Jarrett promised me, I'm sure he said the same thing to you, if Acaden ends up picking Duke, we will have him as a guest on the show.
Yes. Yeah. We don't have to worry about that. We have his number, so we can call him. But I will say yes. The one thing I will note out there, and I'm not saying this to leave any hope in people's minds, but nothing's over till it's over, right? We didn't know we were going to get Nick Kaminia until literally like he announced it, and that was because the day of the announcement, things fell apart at UCLA, and Duke kind of said, "Hey, we're right here," and it happened. So I don't think those final decisions have been made. I know Kenny's probably leaning towards one school over the other, but it's not over till it's over, and we'll wait and see on Saturday what he actually decides. But as you know, for me, a lot of these picks I don't know personally. This one I do. This one I'm super proud of, no matter what his decision is. I just hope I don't need to go to Rupp Arena to watch him play. Maybe the Champions Classic next year in the Garden, I can kind of root for both.
There you go. All right, so let's get to the other recruit, and this is a recruit that the experts out there say is fairly likely to pick the Blue Devils. That's Shelton Henderson. He is a 6'6" wing, ranked number 15 in the country according to the 247 composite. I told you he was 6'6". The important thing with him is he's 6'6", 220. Dude is built like a brick wall. He has huge hands. He has long arms. He is an explosive leaper from the wing. He has this kind of physicality about his game that allows him to impose his will on other players around him. He is a high IQ playmaker. He is not just a physical specimen. This is a dude who's really good with the ball in his hands, has good vision, very, very good instincts. His primary offensive move is to overpower defenders, drawing fouls while taking the ball in the lane. He's a really, really versatile defender. Shelton Henderson is a guy who can guard 1 through 4 quite easily. And, like in different scenarios, he could probably even guard at 5. Someone who is ideal for a switching defense that Duke likes to do. Gets a lot of deflections because he's got those long arms and he's very quick. And goes after rebounds, like with a hunger. Dude, like he's well known for grabbing these rebounds with 2 hands, just like scraping it off the backboard. Does the dirty work to make his team better. He's just a guy who's known as a winner. I've seen him compared to Stephon Castle of UConn, who was like arguably, on top 2 or 3 freshmen in the country last year and won a national title. But a lot of people see sort of aspects of Castle's game in what they see from Shelton Henderson. Now, I've said nothing but good stuff. I'm going to be honest, not a good 3-point shooter. This is a kid who needs to work on his outside shooting in a pretty big way. In fact, there are people who say he probably has to remake his shot, that his release, the way he puts it up there, is just not going to make him into a consistent outside shooter. We should note that he is deciding. He also has 3 finalists. You say Acaden Lewis has 2. Shelton Henderson has 3 finalists. Duke, Texas, and Louisville. I get the impression it's Duke or Texas. Actually, I get the impression it's Duke, but
I like your impression.
Yeah, he's from Texas, so the theory is either he's going to go off someplace to play in one of the biggest name programs out there, or he'll stay home in Texas. I'm sure Texas has put together a very, very impressive NIL offer for Shelton Henderson, and we'll find out midday on Saturday. Donald, you have anything you want to say about this kid?
Yeah, I think when it comes to Shelton Henderson, one, he fits the criteria. He's 6'6", so we still don't have anybody under 6'5".
Right. Yeah, the fact that Acaden Lewis is 6'2" means he's ruled out, right?
yeah. That was he'll grow. He can grow 3 more inches before next season. We'll work on that this year. But when it comes to Shelton Henderson, I think the one thing you mentioned, his high IQ, and the going rate this time was, John Shire brought in a lot of guys who can play defense and can shoot the 3. This coming year with this 2025 class, there's a lot of guys who were labeled as high IQ, smart, can see the floor, nice vision. And that's great too, because
but not great shooters.
But not great shooter. But the thing is, it all depends on who stays, right? We have a logjam at several positions this year. We're already asking ourselves, how are people going to get playing time? Hey, shooting's going to get you on the court. Being a high IQ player is going to get you on the court. Great defense is going to keep you on the court. So as long as these guys can provide, good defense, and Cameron Boozer is going to have the rebounds, right? Caden Boozer is going to have the court vision. Nick Kaminia is going to have the, be able to get into different spots and kind of have a similar game to Colin Knipple, in the sense that he can find his spot on the floor and really get to it. And then you have Shelton Henderson, who can bruise his way. And you have a lot of these different things. The X factor is the physicality of Shelton Henderson. That is one thing that we tried to get stronger and tougher this offseason. We won't have to worry about that next year, because we have guys coming in that are tough, that are built with steel. And I think that is going to be, again, when you kind of define these different teams, that next year's team, this next year's team could be a team that might not shoot as well as this year's team, but they're going to have the physicality, they're going to have the defense, they're going to have the smartness, and they're going to be able to get to their spots. And that can be just as lethal a team as a team who's shooting the ball well all night. So I'm really looking forward to both of them. Like you said, they're about an hour or so apart, or half an hour apart from the decision. So hopefully it's a great day on Saturday for Duke.
Yeah, I don't want to get into too much detail on it until we've heard the decision. I'll say the one thing with Shelton Henderson, for a kid who's in everyone's top 20 and a lot of people's top 15, I think he's a kid who would be coming to Duke probably for a somewhat limited role, at least initially, because Duke next year on the wing, first of all, I think it's very possible that Nick Kaminia is going to play a fairly decent amount on the wing. We hope and expect both Isaiah Evans and Darren Harris will still be around. Those guys will be major competition for minutes with Shelton Henderson. I think it's very possible that Duke will be going into the transfer portal to get experienced wing players. And look, it's not at all unlikely that Proctor or Foster could be back. That just has a ripple effect through those perimeter kind of minutes, which is where Shelton Henderson would mostly be playing. But we'll see what happens with them. Duke's recruiting is on a roll. And if there's one thing we have learned lately, it is that it doesn't matter if there's competition. If there are guys at your position, John Shire is an absolute master at explaining to these guys how they would fit into Duke's future plans. And then the guys go, yep, I'm sold.
And on everyone's wish list this week, it's Wednesday. The hope is after Halloween, maybe Friday night, the wish list would be John Shire gets the last phone call to all these dudes, because that is where he has been known to pull guys, again, make them flip last minute, in the case of Kaminia. But I would love to see both of them at Duke. But again, I hope that John Shire gets that one final phone call, because his track record is pretty good with that last phone call.
Amen, brother. All right, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, Dukies getting paid. That story when we come back.
Get softer, smoother, and more even-toned skin after just one use with the new Gentle Exfoliating line from Cetaphil. Formulated with a unique triple acid blend that promotes surface skin cell renewal, these gentle chemical exfoliators remove dead skin cells and refine skin's texture while hydrating, resulting in softer, smoother, more even-looking skin. Shop the new Cetaphil Gentle Exfoliating line in the face and body aisles at your local Target store or online at Cetaphil.com.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
If you're a facilities manager at a warehouse and your HVAC system goes down, it can turn up the heat, literally. But don't sweat it, Grainger has you covered. Grainger offers over 1 million industrial-grade products for all your operations, including warehouse HVAC maintenance. And even better, they offer access to experts and fast delivery, so you and your warehouse can both keep your cool. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right, we're back from the break on this edition of DBR Bites. As usual, if it's Bites, it's going longer than I expected. All right, let's start with a little bit of Duke endorsement news. We got 2 items that are worth mentioning here. The first one is this. Cooper Flagg has been signed by Gatorade. And you may go, oh, okay, another endorsement. Yeah, he signed with New Balance a little while ago. Yeah, okay, so Cooper's got another endorsement. Well, this one's a little different because Gatorade has never signed a men's college basketball athlete until now. Their first men's college basketball endorser ever in the history of Gatorade is none other than Cooper Flagg. Donald, I loved the way they announced it with this photo of Cooper sweating out blue Gatorade.
Mm-hmm.
That's just cool.
It's part of the whole thing that they always do, right? Gatorade is it in you,
Yeah.
And we've had our guys, Jason Tatum's in the most recent commercial, doing his thing. But yeah, this is fun. I did not know until this announcement came out that they hadn't signed an NCAA player at certain point, especially of course it's only a few years old, but I figured they had gotten somebody. But the fact that they start with Cooper Flagg is awesome for him. It does not change the fact that I already drink Gatorade, so he doesn't have to worry about me. Maybe I'll grab a couple more blue bottles this year for Duke games. But yeah, this is very cool for him, and also in the era of NIL, it again is another reminder to the rest of the country that hey, just because Duke's initial NIL package might not be the biggest, the opportunities that you have to get outside endorsements from the biggest companies on the planet in the world of sports is unmatched. And, Rachel Baker and that crew has done a great job at making sure that these guys have access to these opportunities. And the word first has been, I think it was the first New Balance college athlete, the first Gatorade athlete. Which one is he going to be the first at next? That's the question.
Yeah, exactly. I want to echo something that you were just saying, which is that the reason I think this is a significant story for Duke fans to be aware of is that, look, this is what Duke does. And we pay well in terms of pay for play NIL. I mean, Duke is probably one of the top 10, top 15 schools in terms of, the overall budget for the basketball team. But the reason Duke signs top classes, the reason Duke gets guys like Cooper Flagg and all the other, ridiculous studs that we bring in year after year after year is because we are masters at building your brand. We are masters at amplifying your popularity with our record-breaking social media. There's no social media team that is even in a ballpark with the Duke social media folks. And through Rachel Baker and other folks at Duke, we will connect players with big time corporate sponsors. If you ask me who's going to be the first in terms of a corporate sponsorship deal, a Duke player is pretty darn likely to be the name that you pick. And it matters to Gatorade that the guy that they picked is a guy who's going to be playing on national TV every single game.
Right.
Like Duke's on national TV more than like everyone but the Lakers practically. I think of someone like an AJ Dibansa, who's the number one player in the 2025 class and is almost certainly going to BYU. And he's going to get paid an outrageous sum of money to play for BYU. And good for him. Thrilled for you, AJ. But he's not going to be in the national consciousness. He's not going to be on TV. He's not going to be creating a brand and getting his sponsors awareness the way Cooper Flagg is doing it this year, or the way Cameron Boozer will be doing it next year. Playing for Duke is different.
I mean, this is sort of a segue to our next one, but if you remember last year, people were making fun of Jared McCain's fingernail polish, and guess what he got? He got an NIL deal from a nail polish company.
Exactly.
So, I mean, we like the power of social media, again, the power of the brand and the power of just being in the national lexicon and conversation means that these guys can get deals that other guys can't, or may have access to those opportunities. Because again, if Jared McCain is painting his fingernails at BYU, he's not getting a deal from a nail polish company, but because it's on national TV and because it was a Florida State, whoever decided to make fun of him and he torched him for 30, they were like, yo, you should have our nail polish and you should, be you and be as creative as you want to be, but do it using our nail polish. Like, that's an easy win for him. It's an easy win for the brand. It's an easy win for Duke.
Exactly. And speaking of Jared McCain, he is the next item up on this edition of the DBR podcast. He has been signed by Jordan Brand, for his shoe deal. It is worth noting that Jordan Brand only signed 4 players from the current rookie class in the NBA, so they are being very selective. They've signed Jared McCain, Dalton Connect, Stephon Castle, who we were talking about just a little while ago, and Jacoby Walker from this rookie class. McCain, it should be noted, will be wearing Tatum 2s. I kind of gave away part of the story there because Jordan Brand has a certain Jason Tatum in their arsenal. And the last thing I wanted to note was, sure, part of the reason they signed Jared McCain is because Jordan Brand expects he will be a good player for the Sixers at some point. Sure. Part of the reason they signed him is because he was on TV a lot for Duke last year. But I'll tell you the other reason why they signed him. Dude's up to like almost 4 million followers on TikTok. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's nobody in the game of basketball who is working better on his brand than Jared McCain. And it's worth noting, he has more than doubled his TikTok followers since he announced he was coming to Duke.
He becomes the 4th Duke player to sign with Jordan Brand. You mentioned Jason Tatum. Zion Williamson is also a Jordan Brand athlete, and Paulo Banchero, who we will talk about in just a minute. But I also, when this news came down, when we were talking about it, I joked that it's super funny that we hate everything UNC, and then these guys go to the league and get signed by Jordan Brand. That means even Jordan wants our Duke players, which it goes without saying they should, because he saw them saw his team get torched by us in college. And then these guys come to the league and he's like, nope, I want these guys wearing my shoes. So congratulations to Jared McCain. Again, we're watching his rookie season with great anticipation because we think he's going to do super well with the Sixers. And now he's going to be doing it in Jason Tatum's, which is funny. Like there's always the quirky things where a guy in his team plays another guy and he's wearing that guy's shoes. And they're like, oh, I can't wear his shoes when I play against him. And then, that guy goes off for like 40 because he sees he's got the intimidation factor. So I wonder what's going to happen when the Sixers and Celtics meet for the first time and Jared McCain walks on the floor and he sees Jason Tatum, who he knows very well. But I wonder what's going to happen. Is he going to wear the shoes? Is he going to wear some other generic Jordans that day? So pay attention to what he's wearing. But I think that it's very cool when that happens. And it's also just the brotherhood becomes stronger because, Jason Tatum, Zion Williamson, and Paul Banchero all went to China over the offseason to promote the Jordan Brand, and they did it together. And they were the only athletes representing the Jordan Brand over in China. So now Jared McCain can say, hey, let's make it a brotherhood trip, and he can go with them as well.
Exactly. All right, our last thing that we want to mention You teased it up a couple seconds ago. Paulo Banchero. Folks, if you did not hear, Paulo had a bit of a game the other day. He had 37 points in the first half. This was a game for the Orlando Magic against the Indiana Pacers. He ends the game. Here's the line. I mean, this is absurd. 50 points, 13 rebounds, and 9 assists. Oh, yeah, he also had 2 blocks and a steal. He shot 16 of 26 from the field, just 3 of 9 from 3. So minus those 3-pointers, he was 13 of 17 from the floor, basically unstoppable when he got the ball. Lifted his team, by the way. Orlando's now 3-1 on the season. I mentioned they beat Indiana. Indiana is a team that, last year was in the Eastern Conference Finals. They are expected to be one of the top teams in the East. Frankly, right now, the East looks like the Celtics and then like 4 or 5 other teams behind them trying to compete for second through like 5th or so. The Knicks, the Sixers, the Bucks, Cleveland, Indiana, and Orlando. And in fact, I mean, you can make a fairly decent argument that Orlando may be ahead of all those other guys other than perhaps Cleveland at the moment. Donald, talk to me about Paulo just going off.
Well, the first thing is you mentioned the 37 points in the first half that matched the entire Indiana Pacers team. So it was Paulo 37, Indiana 37 at the half. And oh yeah, Orlando had some other guys score, so they were obviously ahead. I think you mentioned this when we were talking about it, but he's the second youngest player to ever have a 50-10-5 game.
Yes.
In the NBA. The youngest ever was LeBron. LeBron had like 3 years to do it before he was Paulo's age. But look, the fact that Paulo Banchero was at a 50 and really almost had a triple double, right? He was an assist shy of a triple double. Yeah. He's putting up like
50-point triple doubles are pretty rare, my friend.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I think the last one who did it was like Luka Doncic or something like that.
Yeah.
But like these are some elevated superstar, stratosphere numbers, and Paulo has been doing really well in the NBA, but the fact that he has started out this year so early, he looks like a guy that's on a mission who wants to kind of show, not that he was slighted by Team USA, right? But he was one of those guys that was in consideration for that last spot. And then also again, when Kawhi Leonard had to withdraw. But I'm sure he's like, hey, next time they're not going to have a problem picking me because they won't have a reason not to, because of how he's playing so far. So hopefully that continues all the season. Like we've mentioned in the preview of the NBA when we talked about all the brotherhood that's in the NBA, the Magic are a team to watch this year because they're gonna be a fun group, and Paulo Banchero was leading that charge.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's sort of silly that 50 points is only 1 point more than 49, but hitting that round number, hitting 50 is a big deal. This is going to help Paulo with making the All-Star team, frankly, with making all NBA teams. I think Paulo is a guy who's probably very much in the running this year to make one of those all NBA teams to join Jason Tatum, as recent Duke grads who make the all NBA teams.
And he wants it, right? But not in a way that he's going to sacrifice the team, right? The fact that he's getting a 50-point, 50 burgers out there and the team is excelling is different than like, there's sometimes where you see a guy go get his and the team is struggling to win or end up losing. He's a guy that wants those accolades. He wants to be viewed as one of the best players in the NBA. And I think he's on that trajectory to be one of the best players this season, but he's also not doing it at the sacrifice of team wins and making his team better. Because as you mentioned, like 13 rebounds, 9 assists, those are team stats. Those are things where he's helping the team and getting his teammates in position to make a play. So I really enjoy what I'm seeing from him so far, and let's hope he can keep it going.
Yeah. Hey, a super quick shout out before we go. Just yesterday, Kyle Filipowski got his first meaningful time in the NBA. He had only played a total of 9 minutes in the first 4 or 5 games of the season, I believe it was, for the Utah Jazz. Utah had a couple injuries. As a result, Paulo was forced into action, played 25 minutes.
Flip.
Sorry, not Paulo. Flip was forced into action. He played 25 minutes, had 12 points, 8 rebounds, showed that he is a guy who looks like he belongs at this level. And I'm happy for him because, the start of the season had been a little bit of a struggle for him. This is a guy who had never had to sit on the bench a lot in his life. And here he was riding the pine. And it's, just good and exciting, I'm sure, for him to be getting in the NBA scorebook in a pretty big way.
And great to see that he's, doing very close to double-double, like he did in basically every game in college,
exactly.
right? Like came off the bench, he's like, oh yeah, we're playing today, cool, double-double, like or very close to it. So yeah, again, hope to see him get more playing time and continuing to improve his game. And the NBA is a different beast in the sense that he's not going to be getting the ball and bringing it up or anything like that. He's got to rely on his teammates to feed him the ball. So the fact that he's able to do that will give his teammates confidence that, hey, if I give the ball to this guy, he's going to make a play.
Exactly. All right, that's going to wrap it up here on episode 65 of DBR Bites. We'll be back in your feed this weekend, probably on Sunday, to let you know about those recruiting decisions that we were talking about earlier, Shelton, Henderson, to talk a little bit about what happened to Duke against Miami. I hope we have a long conversation about that. Kind of afraid it may be a brief one. And we will also be bringing you a preview of Duke's first game, the Duke basketball's first game of the regular season against Miami, coming up on Monday. So check your feed. You're going to want to hear what we have to say about what Miami presents as a challenge to this Duke team that just beat a power conference team by 50 points.
But for that episode, since we're going to be previewing Maine, bring your lobsters.
If you have lobster, did I say Maine or Miami?
You said Miami, but you said Miami twice. So I got what you were saying. But I will say for the Maine game, we like lobsters. So if anyone wants to send us lobsters to help us, or lobster rolls to help us preview that game, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. We will send you our address. Don't send lobsters. We're joking. But if you have an extra lobster, I'm coming over. We're gonna have some good food.
There you go. Exactly. All right. He's Donald. I'm Jason. They are the Duke Band, playing us out and taking us home. God, I can't believe I misspoke like that. After I said it, I was like, I think I just said we're playing Miami in the first game.
Well, you said Miami. You're like, hey, we're playing football, and then all of a sudden you said Miami again, and then you said a team who won by 50 points, and I was like, oh, he shifted to basketball in the same sentence. So it wasn't like you shifted and then we heard it. It was a blend, a wine blend.
Yeah, but we wouldn't be previewing Miami when we're recapping Miami.
It's true. It's true.
Oh, I'm too tired.